Welcome to the USS Automation Village. I'm Chris Little, your acting captain, and over the next 60 minutes, we will explore strange new automation worlds and advanced SCADA technology. Our usual panel of experts will talk cybersecurity in honor of Cybersecurity Month. Our producer, Pete Diffley, will go on location in North Carolina to talk about advances in cellular technology. Our own Keith Donaldson from our Scotland office will take us on a tour of the upgrade to the BWIS system at Shannon Airport. And also for Halloween, we've got some spooky cybersecurity stories and cautionary tales to tell you. And of course, we'll have Natasha Lutz for her usual combination of questions, contests, and costumes. But first, a program note. As you know, normally here in the Automation Village, we come to you live here on YouTube. But this month, because of something good that happened that we can't talk to you about, we actually had to pre-record. So don't worry, if you're here for the contests, we still got contests. We're still going to run our keyword challenge later in the show, so you could still win. And if you're on the comments right now, say hi to Natasha. She's watching those. But first, let's kick things off by going to Scotland to meet newscaster Keith Donaldson for a segment we like to call Hi, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you?
I'm great. So how's the weather in Scotland today?
The weather is not too bad. It's a little overcast. It's dry for the moment and actually starting to feel quite autumnal.
That's a great word to use in a sentence. In honor of Cybersecurity Month, do you have anything to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So kicking off, we're going to talk about the ongoing cyber threat to US water and wastewater systems. Now, this joint advisory is a result of the analytical efforts between the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, that's the CISA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the National Security Agency. So that's a lot of agencies around the table.
That's a big table.
Absolutely. So these guys have been analyzing both known and unknown actors targeting the information technology systems and the operational technology network systems and devices of the US water and wastewater systems sector. Now, these are ongoing threats that are using sophisticated techniques like spear phishing, exploiting out-of-date or unsupported operating systems or hardware, firmware, and so on. And there's a great article on the CISA website, which we'll post over on the Automation Village forum after the program there. But the article goes on to look at the various mitigations that can be taken, one of which should be using VT-SCADA, of course.
Of course.
But also things like setting up a DMZ, a demilitarized zone for forward-facing web servers and services.
Right. So for those of you wearing a uniform like this one, a DMZ could be considered like the neutral zone.
Of course. So in other news, we've got a very interesting article from a company called Sea Machines, who complete the world's first 1,000 nautical mile autonomous voyage. So Sea Machine Robotics, they're developing these robotic vessels, seagoing vessels. And this is the first time that they've broken the 1,000 nautical mile journey, which took 129 operational hours spread over 13 days. The incredible thing is that the vessel was sailing around Copenhagen and Hamburg over in Europe, whilst it was overseen by the US Coast Guard licensed mariners remotely stationed in Boston, 3,000 miles away. So it's quite incredible to see autonomous vehicles, not only in the air and on the road, but now on the water too. And then finally this week, a news story from my back garden. Aberdeen City Council, Aberdeen, of course, is the home.
Are they still in your backyard? They should go home.
Yeah, they really should. Aberdeen City Council has picked oil and gas giant BP as the preferred bidder for building a green hydrogen production hub right here in Aberdeen. So the first phase is a $215 million project, which will be up and running in 2024. The green hydrogen is going to be used for buses, heavy goods vehicles, and large vans initially. And then the concept is expanding to scale up into rail, freight, and marine operations. And then finally, they're looking to do global export of the hydrogen. So that's really interesting news coming out this week based on the fact that, of course, COP26 is happening next week in Glasgow.
Right. And for those of us who don't know what that is, what is that?
So COP26 is a conference of parties. It's where the world leaders come together. And this is the 26th annual summit where they are, it's a pivotal movement against climate change. So they're looking at all the environmental policies from all the different countries from around the world. And hopefully some good news and some good promises coming out of there to try and reduce greenhouse gases and protect our environment.
Yes, it's going to be really interesting to see over the next few years how all of the different infrastructure and private industry are all going to start switching over to renewable energy.
Absolutely, and it's a large challenge. You know, the world is very based on carbon fuels at the moment, carbon-based fuels at the moment, and the switch is going to. It's going to be a difficult one. There are going to be lots and lots of challenges, and it's great to see how technology is going to feature in that.
Yes. And so thanks, Keith. And we're going to see you a little later in the show. Keith will be actually taking us on a tour of Shannon Airport to show off their new BWIS system, or their upgrade to their existing BWIS system.
Yes, that's right.
All right. I promised you I'd tell you about the contest coming up. The Code Phrase Challenge works like this. At some point later in the show, we're going to splash a code phrase across the screen, and then we're going to shout, "This is the code phrase." Copy the code phrase into the subject line of an email and send that email to natasha.lutz@trihedral.com. Hit send, and the first 2 people to do that will win each a $100 online gift card from an online shopping thing that I'm sure you've heard of. All right? Good luck, everybody. Oh, rules. Not everybody can win. If you're an employee of Trihedral, if you are an employee of our parent company, Delta Electronics, hi Delta, you may not win. If you have participated in some way in the making of the show, I'm very sorry, but otherwise you're good to go. More rules are in the description for this video. And now, my children, gather close around the monitor and let me tell you the spooky story of the offline control system that wasn't.
Design in your mind a scary SCADA scenario of the following specifications. Meet Stephanie Jobstress, a superintendent of a utility responsible for the taps and toilets of thousands of residents. All day, she works tirelessly to keep the process running efficiently using their state-of-the-art SCADA system. But each night, she worries that some network ne'er-do-well, some digital dementor would hack her system and lay it to waste. To keep her system safe, she decided that there would be no remote operator access, no interfaces to third-party systems, no connections to the internet whatsoever. She slept soundly knowing that her SCADA sat securely in the trusted zone. Meet Nick Nightshift. He's the operator who watches over the system while the town sleeps. Each night, Nick stares at his monitor waiting to spring into action at the first sign of an alarm. On those nights, Nick feels happy and alive. But the rest of the nights feel very, very long. So long that Nick had to do something to keep from falling asleep on his keyboard. Something that led him deep into the Radio Shack, where he bought 100 feet of telephone cable, with one end plugged into his SCADA server and the other into a business computer down the hall. He would chat with friends and play online games like Blocko and Blades of Battle Online, While not best practice, he was sure that it was fine, since their system was deep in the trusted. Meet soisyourmom245 at hotmail.com, a hacker who spends nights pounding Mountain Dew and sniffing for open ports on the internet. It didn't take long to find the unsecured office computer, but it took 3 Kit Kat bars to figure out that it was connected to a critical water system. After that, all our superintendent's worst fears came true, and for a while, the taps and toilets did not flow. This utility learned the hard way that the trusted zone is not a single IT policy, but a culture of security where everyone is aware and prepared for attacks from unlikely vectors. They learned that the trusted zone is a state of mind.
Next up, our producer Pete Diffley visits Lord & Company to talk to them about the changing role of cellular communications in modern automation systems.
For many years, the automation community would largely agree that wired is a better choice than wireless, certainly from a reliability point of view. Wireless really only being chosen when there is no other option to cable something out. So if you needed to connect something wirelessly on the basis of some piece of critical infrastructure, your choices were really based around having your own radio system or conventional radio system, also known as private mobile radio in other parts of the world. Cellular wasn't really a thing until maybe 20 years ago when it first introduced itself as a possible choice in the industrial sector. But reliability really wasn't there. Systems would drop off networks all the time. So over that 20 years, technology has improved quite a bit. You see a lot more towers like the 5G tower next to me popping up, and you also hear terms like NB-IoT or Cat-M1. So when you start thinking about cellular as a possible solution to conventional radio systems, it certainly gets interesting, because now the playing fields are beginning to level. And instead of it being a choice between wired and wireless, now it's becoming, what wireless technology do you want to use? I met up with a company that specializes in both conventional radio systems and cellular technologies, just to hear what their take is on choosing one or the other.
In a conventional radio system, you own it. You're not dependent upon any third party. So you have control over the system, you have control over the maintenance, you have control of the security of the system, and you know your system. You know that when something is about to fail, you understand the equipment, and you have spare parts. You know what you need to do to get a system back up and running. A cellular system is utilized for its simplicity. It's, you have a simple system with the cellular networks, or the coverage is awesome. You can get by with low gain antennas most of the time. The cons of a conventional system is that you do have the maintenance on it. You do have to take care of it. You're having to possibly have high antennas on towers or tanks. And so therefore you have to maybe climb and get to those antennas to replace them. Where in a cellular system, somebody else is climbing that tower and maintaining that system. However, with the cellular system, you have third parties involved, 2 of them as a matter of fact. You've got the cellular carrier, and then you have your ISP. You're connecting through their systems to get to your remotes, to get to your data. And then you, of course, have a monthly recurring fee with the cellular system that you wouldn't have with a conventional radio system. So you are dependent on somebody else, and you do have additional monthly cost. However, a cellular system is normally less cost up front than a conventional system where you're having to develop out your own radio infrastructure. But either system requires that you do a proper design. It's not as simple as just crossing your fingers and hope that it works. You literally have to put in the effort and a design to know how high the antennas need to be, whether it's cellular or conventional. what type of antenna, what type of cable, what type of connectors. And if you have coverage in a particular site, we all know that lift stations are in the lowest area of a community. It's the lowest point. So that is the most likely place to not have cellular coverage. It's also going to be the hardest point in that community to get a conventional radio system. Cellular broadband speed is awesome right now. You know, the carriers are doing a great job of giving us plenty of bandwidth. So when it comes to data, though, you certainly want to manage that, or you could end up with cellular bills that are in the hundreds and thousands of dollars, actually. So even that speed comes with a cost. So you probably could put a camera out at a remote site on your cellular broadband modem that's your SCADA's on, but are you going to want to pay for that data? Where if we're doing a conventional radio system, you still make those considerations. We can still give plenty of bandwidth. There's plenty of ways to use a conventional radio system to give us the bandwidth that you may need if you wanted to put a camera or some other type of security system or whatever it is that you want to do. But that's the things that you have to consider up front before you do the design. You want to know what will the system be utilized for and what kind of bandwidth am I going to need. In a cellular system, part of managing your data is using a pool of data for all your remotes. So if you do have one site that's using a lot of data and the other sites are not, then you're utilizing a pool of data, which is, you know, the best utilization. Many utilities don't realize that they are considered an essential and for public safety. And so you can, on a cellular network, be prioritized as critical infrastructure. And so where your cell phone, you know, you can be knocked off a network, off a cellular network. So, but as far as a remote that's controlling, you know, what your water distribution system or your sewage collection system, you don't want to be knocked off a network. We need to know when a high level alarm is taking place. We need to know, you know, what that tank level is or the system pressure is. And so you need to specify with your carrier that you're part of a critical infrastructure, and so that you have high priority on that cellular network. Security is important no matter what type of system you use. Conventional, you have control over it, but you certainly have to be concerned about what type of system that you're putting in and what this security measures have to be taken. You know, where you do need a firewall, where are the touch points and the connectivity points. So security and encryption, time stamping, all that's very important in any type of system. On the cellular network, you know, you certainly want to utilize hardware that, you know, increases your security at each of your sites. VPN tunneling, and you certainly never want to use public IP addresses that can be pinged or accessed by somebody that's looking to do the utility harm.
Hey everyone, my name is Ian. I'm joined here by Lee and Pete, and this month we are doing a cybersecurity related talk. We regret that Pam is not here to join us for this one. But what we're going to be covering here is based around the Water ISAC 15, which is a document that is covering the top 15 cybersecurity procedures and ideas that you should be following. Now, the Water ISAC 15 is in essence a document that acknowledges from the water cybersecurity community's point of view that they get it. They are going to be following the cybersecurity that the rest of the world is following, which in the United States frames itself around the NIST cybersecurity framework and the underlying documents therein, which include of relevance to everyone on this talk who will be listening in, say, in the next month or so when the Biden administration puts their foot down, NIST 7, which is the Zero Trust model, and 800-160 Volume 2, which is the Cyber Resilience model. Now, from a practical, what the heck should people be doing? We're going to break this talk up into 3 distinct sections. The first is going to be related to technically, what should someone be doing? The second is going to be focused on the operational and procedural point of view of how do you get people to pay attention to this and actually implement it at both a management level and at a ground level point of view. And then the third phase that we're going to talk about is how do you provide people with, from a user experience point of view, something that gives them the flexibility that they need to continue to not only do their job, but innovate on the job so that the system continues to get better. So from a technical point of view, how do you produce a cyber resilient system with a budget of, let's use the example of someone who has a $2,000 budget. The first step within this is one which you can't exactly pay someone else about because you don't have the money, but it's free to think about this to start thinking as a cybersecurity consultant. And that is, first, view the world from the perspective of IT and OT. So operational technology components, those should be sitting on an independent network. Now you can do that on a computer pretty quickly if you are interfacing with your router. Now, if you aren't the person that does that, you need to go down to your IT department and tell them you need a distinct OT network. And you know what? That needs to be done before you leave for Thanksgiving. It is a 1-day process if you know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's about a 3-day process. Once you have made a distinct IT, distinct OT network, the second thing that I would recommend is reassess who is supposed to actually be getting into that and find a way to formalize the process by, with, and through which someone can ask for and receive approval to gain access to that network. Now, we're going to take that concept and shelve it for a moment because you're probably thinking that is going to consume a huge amount of time from a management point of view. And it is there where we will hand the ball off to Lee. The final thing, though, that I will talk about before we move to is oftentimes people get confused by vendors because vendors will be talking about how we secure the connection pathway from our particular device inside of the OT perimeter out to our services. The way the petroleum industry, for one, has gone about solving this problem is saying, I know I've got 50 vendors inside of the perimeter, and each of them has had to solve the problem of transport at some point or another. I don't care about that because I don't want to have to vet 15 different data transport layers. Disaggregate the data transport piece from the activity piece taking place inside of your perimeter. If you do that, you'll find that this is a much easier thing to solve. Finally, at the data transport layer, there are 2 things you're going to need. The first is an intermediate component that is disposable. For the vast majority of the people out there, that is a virtual desktop that is cycling every time it is used. The second thing you need is a moving target defense-based network, which is something that is called for now under multiple standards in the United States, and internationally, it's sort of a fuzzy area because they haven't updated their standards because of COVID. All that is a network that shifts over time and doesn't exist unless when you need it to exist. And finally, this is just something to mention to your IT department. This is an egress-only access system. Don't worry about that. Just write it down and tell them they need it. So what I've just described is stuff that is practically free to implement and very much necessary if you're trying to follow the standards. Challenge here, though, is you've got these technical things that you need to ask for, but how the heck do you get them implemented in a fashion that doesn't soak up so much time that people don't actually follow the rules, they go around them? And then from a second point of view, how do you explain that this stuff is important? And for this, I'm going to pass the ball over to Lee.
Well, thank you, Ian, and it's good to be with y'all today. And just like anything in life, situational awareness is key. If you're getting gas in a sketchy area of town, you might get robbed, so you might want to be alert. Cybersecurity is about your surface of attack. And if you look on the news, where is your surface of attack within your company? And that is where you need to focus a lot of your training. Email. People are clicking on phishing attacks. People are being spear phished. It's 9 out of 10 times that people are getting involved with a situation like this is because they're getting malware on their computers, and then they're connecting those same computers to a vulnerable network where there are pieces of equipment that may not be firmware updated, and that's which I need to do a little quick shift here. Everybody needs to have an inventory of all their equipment on their SCADA systems and be conscious of what firmware version that they have on there. And I just moments ago shared a tool that can be used by water, wastewater, industrial clients, where you can type in your vendor and you can look and see if there's anything listed that's got known bad firmware or software. I mean, even if this problem has been corrected, you may still have that same hardware on your network. And hey, if you don't know, you don't know. And when these vulnerabilities occur, you have you may be able to be vulnerable to something that's been out there for years. Also, it can help you to look at this list to see if the vendor has a long history of having open issues. Now, everybody on that list is going to have issues, and anybody that's making anything is going to have issues. It's just how quickly they respond, and if how they communicate those problems with their user base. That's what the things you need to do to evaluate vendors. This very procedure needs to be on your OT preventative maintenance list, and the things that Ian is mentioning about having virtual private networks. The first thing you need to do if you already have a virtual private network is log into your SCADA system and see if you can go to Google or any other website simultaneously. Because if that's the case, then your VPN is connected to the network, the World Wide Web. And that's a dangerous situation for people that, somebody may not have the best taste of websites that they go to. If they were to go to gambling sites or they go to say pornography sites, that's where a large source of malware beyond email is. So, hey, situational awareness is key. And if you're aware of what to do and you train people using commonly available tools, as far as, hey, you send people emails to see simulated phishing attacks and you train them on what to look for. On top of that is, does this individual actually need email? Okay. Can they do their job without being connected to an email service? So, I mean, people don't want to not have email at work, but it's honestly a huge vector. So we need to ask the question.
Sorry, Lee, I'm going to keep you on for one more second with a follow on there. So
sure.
I know you probably have encountered this. Other utilities certainly do. There's the debate about, I don't want to get rid of email for XYZ person. If you encounter that, there are two options. They can either be given distinct device, which is $1,000 problem per person, or they can be assigned a procedure by which they go through a virtual desktop to get to the system. Between those two choices, if you're in the seat of managing a utility, which of those two do?
Devices are probably simpler to do to try to handle that. People are less likely to have a problem with a dedicated device. And typically that's what we've been doing, is issuing out devices. We don't allow virtual private networks on BYOD. We don't do that. We don't allow email on your own device as well. So yeah, company supplied devices are probably the way we do it.
Okay. So taking that and then reinterpreting it briefly so that we can throw the ball over to Pete first thing. Finally for Pete, outside of this automation forum, there has been a great deal of noise being made over the differences between various SCADA providers and how much flexibility they provide to the end operators in reconfiguring their systems over time to reflect the problem on the end, and also just how the operator is trying to interpret what they're seeing. So what I'd hope to hear from Pete here is, could you talk about the distinction between modularity and giving people an interface that they can adjust on their own? So the idea that you have this underlying system that's constantly vetted, and then above that, you essentially have given them ClarisWorks, colors, and all the rest. What are the decisions that are going on with VT SCADA right now in relation to UI?
That's a really great question as well, Ian. Yeah, so modularity is, it can be kind of viewed in a few different ways. If you look at it from on the basis of modularity when it comes to the UI itself, the user interface, well, systems like VT SCADA, what we do is we give you a huge palette of objects and tools, and we try and eliminate as much of the coding that you might actually traditionally have to use when it comes to other systems. There are systems out there that and they are quite popular, and you can go on the web and it looks like you've been given a huge amount of flexibility, which you have. You can download or you can create from scratch by coding everything together. And that may introduce some hostile code, and that is one of the challenges when it comes to trying to secure a system. You have so much flexibility that you can flexibly make it in or unsecured and not realize it. Whereas, yes, you can create objects and lots of different things, even from scratch within our package. But what it'll do is it already has those properties assigned that allow you to set permissions and all kinds of different levels of role. Because you could be an operator who should have maximum access, or you should be someone who has very little access, read only. So that's kind of how the modularity side is I guess, addressed, within a package like ours. Modularity, however, can also be at we call it the coding area, much down lower. And this would be on the basis of that you can get a module to do this and a module to do that. And we frequently challenge people when it comes to, once you go outside the ecosystem of a SCADA system, and I mean where it's absolutely homegrown, and that's something that we're proud that we've done within our company, is we build so much of what what you get as a customer. It's tested with millions of users in different parts of the world doing different things, and that is part of how we do our testing. Is that you're part of that testing environment. Not on the basis of that you're our guinea pigs, but we're much more likely to find an issue. If there's any issue, we're going to find it because we own all of our code and we give that then to you in a highly tested environment. Unlike if you stitch it together in what we would call Franken-SCADA system. So that's kind of really where you have like lots of third-party modules, and that's where modules sometimes get a bit misconstrued. So if you had lots of third-party software and you're trying to put it all together, well, that's a huge challenge to keep all of that secure and make sure that it all works together. So that's kind of where we talk about kind of trying to keep it in our ecosystem, and that's what we do. So we give you lots and lots of flexibility within our ecosystem. So it's modular, but within that environment. An aspect when you get down to the base level, down to those third-party systems, would really be, I think, maybe highlighted if I asked, both you and Lee, whether or not you've ever come across this character called the lock-picking lawyer. Because this guy, he actually has his own YouTube channel. And what he does is he tests systems on the basis of like padlocks, locks, but he also actually will report on whether some of the claims by some lock manufacturers, some very famous lock manufacturers, whether they really are hardened or not. And very recently, I was looking at something that I thought was quite relevant, and it was to do with modular components. Like when you'd be using a biometric device, so fingerprint reader or a retina scanner, and it looks great, it looks really fancy. You put it outside the door of your control system and no one can get in, so you think. Until you see the lock-picking lawyer just put a simple magnet right next to the actual biometric device, because the modular type ones typically have a relay in the little console, the little reader part, and that'll activate a relay, and the relay will open the door. Same with RFID cards. So if you're very proud that you have great, security, you're using ID cards and you're walking around and you flash the card in front of an RFID reader. That's great, but make sure that those cards are actually bidirectional encrypted systems. So they're not just a dumb device that essentially just spit out some binary, because he'll show you also on his channel that he set up and was saying, well, if you set up like in a Starbucks or somewhere across the way from a major facility, and the people are coming in and out and they're getting their coffees in the morning, you can read hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of cards as they go by. And it's super easy because, the range of those devices typically can be, maybe 2 or up to 3 feet with a simple antenna system that could be in your bag. So his advice would be always first I'd get decent quality, RFID cards and use those, on the basis of the ones that have the handshaking. So they're encrypted and they give handshaking. And the second thing is, apart from storing those in those sleeves that really work well, you should also put your cards together, because when an RFID reader comes near it, it spits out gibberish. It gets all the cards at the same time, so the binary is kind of rubbish. So that's his advice. And I would say it's worth looking at that channel, The Lockpicking Lawyer. I don't know him, but he's got a lot more views than we have. But at the same time, I think very worthwhile. So think about that. So modularity on the basis of 2 different things. One is inside the ecosystem with the UI, and the second thing is when you have modular components, you really have to be very careful about how you put them together, because you could be introducing huge weaknesses in your system.
Now I'm going to grab this, Pete, and thank you. This brings up 2 topics. First, for the forum at large, the audience that's listening, what we were just what you were just hearing was a concept of the cyber-physical realm being bridged. So the idea of an ID card being part of the cybersecurity portfolio is relatively recent, but very reasonable. So if you'd like a talk about the cyber-physical domain, please do post it up. The second thing, which I would note, is I need to do the dirty work here. There is a configuration section inside of the VT SCADA system that you have. For the avoidance of doubt, I have no commercial with VT SCADA. But you absolutely have to go through that config setup to make sure that the thing is set up properly. It has instructions to guide you, and VT SCADA goes out of their way, I know, to answer the phone when clients call to set up their systems properly. So please do that before Thanksgiving as well. And on that note, thank you all very much.
Okay, next up, Keith Donaldson is going to take you on a tour of the BWIS system at Shannon Airport in Ireland. If you don't know what a BWIS system is, no problem, you're about to find out. Some things to bear in mind, they were actually shooting this video as they were commissioning the upgrade to that BWIS system. So it's kind of an amazing example of multitasking. Also, there's some noise. It's a real live industrial place, and there's some beautiful industrial noise going on there. So we did our best to kind of bring that down. And nonetheless, I think you'll really enjoy this deep dive into this very specific technology that most of us aren't even aware of.
Hi, I'm here at Shannon Airport and we're assisting in commissioning an upgrade to the VTS BWIS system and we're upgrading to VT SCADA. I'm here with Mark Duffy, who is a senior IT consultant and analyst here at Shannon Airport, and Mark is going to show us around the BWIS system. Thanks for having us here, Mark. And can you tell us what does BWIS stand for?
BWIS is the Baggage Image Weight Information System.
And so what does that mean?
So the baggage imaging system allows the US Customs and Pre-Clearance here at Shannon Airport to interrogate bags before passengers enter US airspace.
So essentially, passengers who are flying to the US are then clearing customs and immigration here in Shannon Airport.
Exactly. The whole premise of this was to allow transatlantic aircraft to arrive in US airports, and so that the inbound flight would be considered as a domestic flight, and people wouldn't have to queue for the couple of hours that traditionally happens in the big airports, and they can quickly go through customs and board.
So, Mark, can you walk us through the process that a passenger would go through when they're flying to the US, having checking in here at Shannon Airport?
Okay, so the premise behind it is passenger gets to the check-in desk, their boarding card is scanned, followed shortly then by the baggage label. Baggage label is attached to the bag and dispatched. Now, in that scanning process, a picture of the bag is captured. It's associated to both the bag label and the boarding card, so that the passenger is able to be identified with the bag in US customs, and should there be questions later, the information can be interrogated by the US Customs Border Police.
So, Mark, can you take us down and talk us through the process? Hey, Mark. So, this is where I'd be checking in for my flight to the US. So I take it I just put my bag on the belt here. There we go. Okay, Mark, so could you just walk through the process of inducting a bag into the BWIS system, please?
Sure. So we see here there's a traffic light system. At the moment it's waiting for a boarding card. So once we scan the passenger's boarding card, we get another indicator to tell us to scan the bag label. Scan the bag label. Again, we get an indicator to say that it's ready to dispatch. So when we dispatch the bag will go to the end of the belt and will be captured by the CBP cameras. So now that we're ready to dispatch, we hit the dispatch button. The bag contains that space.
That's great. So is it the BWIS, the VT-SCADA BWIS system that's controlling all these buttons and lights?
No, it's the baggage handling system and the PLCs that do all the magic. The BWIS just interfaces with that system in order to inject each bag.
We've just passed through passenger screening, and Shannon Airport has just gone through a massive upgrade of their passenger screening system. It means that you no longer have to take the electronic components out of your bag. Fluids can pass through, and it speeds up the whole process. They've got 4 lines running, and the X-ray system is a 3D tomography system, so that the agents are able to see the bags in full 3 dimensions and see right through everything that's contained within. It's a really terrific system, and one of the first in Europe to have this system fully installed. So, Mark, we've passed through passenger screening. We've been into duty free and bought all our duty free. We've been to the restaurant and had a nice pint of Guinness, and now we're ready to enter the US border protection pre-clearance. So now obviously we're not allowed to film inside there, it's a restricted area. But can you tell us a little bit about what happens with the BWIS system and the passengers?
Sure. Behind me is the US Customs pre-clearance facility in Shannon. When passengers enter this area, they're essentially entering US soil. So a passenger, when they get to the primary inspection station, they present a boarding card. The boarding card is scanned by the agent. He or she is able to have a look at all the bags that have been inducted by that passenger. If the customs agent is happy with all the information that he's been presented, they're allowed to proceed into the US clearance area. If there's any questions to be had, that information is carried out in a different station, and depending on the outcome of that, the bag is allowed through and loaded on the aircraft, or it's pulled from the aircraft and a further inspection takes place.
And so this is the VTS or the VT-SCADA system that the agents are using to pull up this information?
Exactly. So the VT-SCADA allows them to have a look at and interrogate each bag before the passenger proceeds, and they can do that without having to pull the bags and do an initial inspection, and should the information that they're presented with not add up, then at that stage they can instruct through the VT SCADA system for the baggage system or the baggage handlers to send the bags of that passenger back up for further inspection.
Excellent. So the images and the weights that were recorded down at the check-in are displayed on screen for the operators?
Exactly. So the each agent is presented with the full list of the bags for that passenger, associated tags, and the weights and images for that passenger.
So that's how the passengers are handled, but what about the bags themselves? So we've gone through security, we're now down here in the baggage basement next to the baggage handling system, and this I guess is where the bags come from check-in. So Mark, can you just talk us through what's happening with the bags?
So behind us is the baggage system. After the bags are injected at check-in, they make their way through this warren of electromechanical hardware. The bags are X-rayed. They pass through what we call radiation portals to detect if there's any radiation material or radioactive material within the bags. And should they pass through and pass, then they make their way down to the baggage basement, where they're collected and poured onto either dollies or direct onto the plane.
So here we are in front of one of the VT SCADA BWIS stations. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about what happens here?
So when the bags arrive into the baggage basement on the carousel, the sortation process begins. The baggage handlers scan each bag through the station here, and should the CBP clear the bags, the bags are then loaded onto the dolly and then onto the plane. However, if there's questions about the bags, they can be instructed through the station whether to hold onto the bag or not. And instruction is done through the screens.
Excellent. And so there's a bit of a two-way communication between the baggage basement and the US pre-clearance about whether a bag needs to be sent up for secondary inspection or whether the bag needs to be offloaded from the aircraft altogether.
Exactly. So the feedback between the CP screening people and the baggage handlers is immediate. There's no ambiguity if a bag has been flagged as questionable or there is some further investigation needed. The observation is immediate to the baggage handler.
So I've heard the term bingo card. Can you tell me, what does that mean?
So a bingo card is essentially a document that the baggage labels are based on. So if you look at a standard baggage label, there's what they call a tear off, and that is placed onto the bingo card. And as that fills up, bags are loaded onto the dolly. And once the bingo card is full, that means that dolly is cleared and that can proceed onto the aircraft.
Excellent. And so the VT SCADA system has a visual representation of that bingo card on the screen.
That's correct. So while there's a physical bingo card, there is a virtual representation of those tear-offs, and they show up in the form of barcodes, and the baggage agent, if required, can interrogate those images.
So that's great for passengers who are starting their journey here at Shannon Airport, but what about passengers who are flying in from another airport, transiting or transferring from one plane to another?
Okay, in that case, it's very unlikely that the passenger will be going to the front house, so there's what we call a transfer station here, airside, where the bags are inducted. So here we are at the transit transfer station. This is the station that is used to induct bags that are from aircraft that are not originating in Shannon, so passengers that are transiting through Shannon. So the bags will be brought here on dollies, will be offloaded, and the handling agent will induct the bags here. We do that by select the flight. That puts us into the flight, so we enable our CBP mode and we skip the driver. Without fail.
in the check-in departures area. Mark, thank you so much for showing us around the Shannon Airport BWIS system. It's fascinating, and thanks for joining us on the Automation Village.
You're very welcome. We'd love having you here, and it's a pleasure working with BT SCADA.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the spooky version of Questions with Nat. Because we couldn't come to you live this month, I thought I would take a second to record some questions that came in over email since our last episode. And the first one is Trihedral back to doing in-person training courses yet? Hello, your Queen of Hearts here. What a great question. Yes. In-person courses have resumed somewhat at Trihedral. We actually have one next week in Brunswick, Georgia, but that one's full. However, soon our 2022 course listings are going to be up on our website. We hope that you'll be able to join us next year at one of our in-person training. Natasha will put a link in the chat. The second question is, what training courses are going to be offered at VT SCADA Fest? Another great question. And yes, we are happy to offer 3 levels of training at VT SCADA Fest on the Monday through Wednesday. First, we'll have our operations and configuration. This is our level 1 course. Then we'll also have our advanced configuration. It is strongly recommended that you have completed the operation and configuration course before signing up for this. And then our third course will be scripting. This is only held at VT SCADA Fest, and this is for those that want to learn how to code in VT SCADA and maintain and debug such code. Now, you have to have completed an advanced and configuration course before signing up for this. We hope to see you all at VT SCADA Fest in March in Orlando, and Natasha will put a link in the chat for you to register. Happy Halloween! Okay, so that's it for this month's episode of Questions with Nat. Make sure you send us your questions in and we'll answer them live on our next episode, December 16th. Happy Halloween!
Hey, 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 it's time to play Code Phrase Challenge. That's right. Open up an email and in the subject line, write the word spooky, exactly as seen here, and then address that email to natasha.lutz@trihedral.com and hit send. The first 2 of you to successfully do this will each win a $100 gift card. If you work for Trihedral or our parent company Delta, Hi Delta, or work on the Automation Village, you are not eligible, but to the rest of you, bon chance. As we approach the end of the show, I just wanted to remind you of a few things. First of all, please take this moment to like and subscribe this video and our channel. Every time you do that, it really helps to open doors for us in terms of what we can do on this platform. So if you could do that right now, I'd really appreciate it. Also, join our forum. It's free at the address on the screen. There you'll find all the news items and topics that we talk about on the show, including a few that we don't, and you'll be able to see all of our past episodes, so go check that out. And also, if you need a SCADA software, you may notice that the show is sponsored by VT SCADA. And if you're looking for a free version of that software, you can download VT SCADA Lite. It's the free 50-tag version of our award-winning Enterprise SCADA platform. And you can use it if you're a hobbyist, or if you're a professional or a utility, it's yours. Go get it. And also, we won't see you next month. November, we're going to take that off to hibernate, but in December, we'll be back again on December 16th, so we hope you can make that. So a few thank yous. Thank you, Pam Moss with Hawk. She wasn't able to make it this month, but we hope to have her back to host the panel next month. Lee Kibler from Riviera Utilities, Ian Schmertzler with Dispel, Derek Matthews with Lord & Company, and Mark Duffy from Shannon Airport. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to the Automation Village team, Pete Diffley, Dave Spencer, Natasha Lutz, and Keith Donaldson. And I am Chris Little. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in December. Engage.